Hello, and welcome to the Wade Borth podcast. I'm your host, Wade Borth, and in every episode, my goal is to get you to think differently about how money works and ultimately to empower you to take control of your money and your personal financing system. Hello, and welcome back to the Wade Borth podcast. Today, I have a special guest with a gentleman that I actually ran into when I was in Florida at a conference to help me understand and just a better understanding of using whole life in all realms of our world. Today, special guest Jubril Wilson. Jubril, thank you so much for taking the time to come and meet with me, have a podcast. This is always exciting when I bring special guests on because we had a conversation when we were in Florida, and the conversation was really around, if you knew then what you know now, what would you tell yourself? And I think we're going to get into that, but I really want to take this opportunity to have people understand why these conversations are so special. Like anybody else, we're all on this journey. Hopefully we're on this journey together with somebody that we trust and enjoy, but we're all at different stages. So we've all had different experiences. And so what I love about these types of conversations are, Jubril, what I'm going to talk with you today is, hey, what was your experience? What brought you to implementing IBC in your world, in your life? And just want to get a little to know about you a little bit and find out about why this is so special to you as well. So, Jubril, thank you for joining me, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure, Wade. Thank you for having me. And I want to let you know I'm Jubril Wilson, and I help realtors and investors make an additional six figures part-time without working with more buyers and sellers.
Gotcha. So tell me a little bit more about that. How do you do that?
Right now, the market can get a little tough. It sounds like it's tough, high interest rates, and some people are a little fearful of the prices because with the high interest rate and the prices, it's very expensive, and it makes it very much harder and challenging for people to qualify. Therefore, for some of my realtors, we've gone to the space of digital product productivity. You create products based on your story, your niche, and your passions. One product I have is test prep. I'm a broker, so I teach aspiring salespeople and brokers how to beat the real estate exam.
Gotcha. You're getting people in to work the exam, get in there, get their license. But one of the messages I heard down at Cow College, and that was the event that both Jubril and I were at, that's where we met, was Circle of Wealth University, or they call it Cow College for people that don't know what that is. But they make a point, and I've talked about this in the past too, is that you can either make more money or you can be more efficient. And I think what I hear you saying is that you're looking for efficiencies. How can we be more efficient in what we do? And that's really kind of the basis behind the infinite banking concept, right? Jubril, I would think you would agree with that. So,
absolutely. And I'll give you an example. One of my products is from the national portion it's $375 for the national and $375 for the state portion. When you combine them as a bundle, it's $650. If you took one client who got the bundle, that more than covers my monthly premium for my whole life. That's
gotcha.
how I find, as you call them, replace. I'm able to do it. So I found ways to fund my policy, because if we wanted a trip, something luxury, and I think we talked about this, Wade, we would find a way to pay for that trip.
Oh.
Well, I want to find a way to build a legacy for my family. And I didn't always think like this. I was finding ways to make money, but it was for frivolous things. It wasn't for infinite banking.
Right. Yeah, I think, again, it's about finding efficiencies in what we do. And why I was so excited to talk with you is just this same idea of, man, if I could take Jubril of today and have you go back and say, deliver a message to who you were maybe even 3 or 4 years ago. Because what I find and what I know is that everybody starts their path and their journey a little bit differently. We all have to embrace the idea of change. We all have to embrace the idea of controlling the human equation, like Nelson talks about in his book, right, which is just the Parkinson's law and the golden rules, just the different stuff he talks about in the book. It also, what changed in your life, or what made you go, man, I need to listen to something different. I need to think differently. And again, if you would take yourself back, what would be that advice, maybe even 2 years before you really got into IBC, that you could help people really just engage and embrace this idea?
It's all about, thank you for asking that. It's a wonderful question that I wish I could have met you 2 years ago. Again,
I hear that.
Being in the right room. You got to get into the right rooms. It may sound cliche, but it's so true. Your network is your net worth. And if I wouldn't have gone to Cal University, I wouldn't have met you. It's all about, and I call it pathing. So it's certain people that I met on my journey to meet you. I met Curtis
Yep.
May, but before I met Curtis May, I met David D. Simons, who's one of my partners. And we worked together and we met each other through Myron Golden, who's one of our great mentors. So that's the pathing. And this all happened within the last 2 years. So taking one step, saying yes to myself, one investment, and it led me to this. If without that, I would tell people instead of just looking at TV, find a way to get on TV, find a way to be visible so people can start to see what you have to bring to the marketplace. And we all have something. We all have a story. We all, if we're still living, we're a success. We were already a miracle to get on the earth, but if we're still here, that's even greater because look at tomorrow's not promised. So every day is a victory, Wade. And with that mindset, now I don't hold back and I go after all opportunities, especially if I feel that they serve me. So when you offered me this amazing opportunity to speak on a podcast, I had to say yes.
Yeah, I'm glad you did because, like I said, I just want everybody out that's listening to the podcast, right? You're listening to the Wade Borth podcast, listen to us, share this with anybody else. Jubril, I know you're going to be sharing it because the more people hear this message, the more we're all going to be better served. And so the idea is with people that are important to you in your life. I mean, that's really what I tell people. What we'll talk, the conversations I have with you, I have with any of my clients, is hopefully if we're having great conversations, that's good. Now go share that because I love to share the conversations I have with great people, with the people I love. And it can change their lives. And I've seen that. It has changed their lives. I've had a couple of guys on here who've done profit first. And I've shared that with clients. And so they've implemented profit first and they've thanked me many times for that connection. But to your point, it's this connection. It's this, you had a name for it, right? It was pathing, right? I call it sequencing, right? But it's pathing, right? Same
When
thing.
you hear that, that's from me, Dr. Jubril Wilson, pathing. And pathing is also, I call it the cousin of gratitude. When you look at pathing, you can look back and say, wow, how did I meet Wade? I need to thank Curtis for that. I need to thank David Simons. I need to thank Myron Golden. I need to thank my mom for having me. You go back deep. See, pathing, you can look at two different ways to learn. Let's say you end up in jail, God forbid. What's the
Yep.
pathing? What did you do wrong? What was your thinking? You went and stole something and you shouldn't have done it. So it's a pathing, but it's always how we got to the point where we are right now. And we're never a
Yep.
victim. You follow the path and you figure it out. And if you want better results, you do something differently. If you want the same results, which probably I would say is that insanity principle, because a lot of us are not happy with where we are right now. We're behind schedule. If we really want to be honest, we're not maximizing ourselves. Again, what we're talking about, imagine if I'd known this 2 years ago and we would have been working together. How many lives in the world we would have changed by just getting together. But I wasn't at that place at that time.
Yep. No, it is about timing because some people are ready. Some people just aren't quite ready. And that's how I always approach it. I love to go out and share my message. That's why I love to be able to do a podcast. They're timeless. There's no sequence to them. Oh, there are. I do have some podcasts. I don't know if you caught those podcasts. I had a brand new agent in the business who just started her IBC journey. Her name is Nicole Tate. And we went through, we actually took Nelson's book. And I said, I would love for you to I want to take her thought process just being in IBC and matching it with my thought process of 15 years being in IBC because you're never in the river at the same time in the same place, right? So how I wanted is I wanted to go back to see what she had to say, kind of what I want to hear your story and how it's changing your life at the very beginning, because that was different than my path. But it's just so helpful to hear it. But we did a podcast, and you can go back under sagewellstrategy.com, look under podcast, and this is called the BYOB podcast, where we ended up doing 27 episodes just talking about Nelson's book, and we broke down each chapter and each piece of it. So there's a great resource there for people that want to listen to that and talk about that. But that podcast has been super helpful. And again, it's that sequence where people are now ready. And so I'd like to hear from you just a little bit about what's the impact since 2 years ago when you said, hey, I want to change. I've started hanging out. My network now is teaching me about IBC. So what has changed in your life since you've implemented this idea and the strategy? Because it's not a product, it's a thought process.
Absolutely. Just to be very candid with you, I just started in December. I've heard about IBC and I didn't understand it. You see things on Instagram, social media, and they don't really explain it. You just see these results as if everything is great. And I know I had some health challenges with type 2 diabetes, which fluctuates, and high blood pressure. So even if I knew about it fully, Wade, I wasn't ready to hear my results from the medical side.
Mm-hmm.
So I would constantly sabotage or procrastinate because I don't, no one really likes the rejection. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. Nope. Yep.
So I didn't want to get my hopes up for this infinite banking concept. And then they say you're not eligible, or you're eligible. We're going to charge this extra premium for you, Jubril, because of your condition.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to get into that. So it stressed me out and the years go by. But I'm thinking the sooner I start with the fear, the better the chance I have of getting insured. So if I wait till I'm 60, it's not going to make any better because one thing, sure, if you're still alive, you definitely need the insurance, not
Yeah.
just
Yeah. Yeah.
for you, but for your family and what you can do with it. So I started in December, and I've got one whole life policy in a term, and we just finished our other one, another whole life last week.
So you're a living example that the path starts with the first footstep, right? So the journey starts with that first footstep.
That's right.
Taking that first step was difficult, but each step after that is hopefully gets easier, right? Because we have better understanding. We're excited about it. We see a clearer vision. Sometimes that's helpful when we can see and know where we're going. And the knowing where we're going is we're looking for that financial freedom in our lives that, hey, I don't have to worry about somebody giving me a thumbs up or thumbs down about financing a business operation or buying a land, some raw land or whatever it might be that is what we're making our living in. Because Nelson says in his book that we finance everything we do, right? So and so that means no matter if I'm paying cash or using a policy, we're financing everything we do. The question is who's in control. And so
Right.
I like to be in control. I like to be the one that's in control of the financing function because, quite frankly, at the end of the day, that's the most valuable part. I mean, banks know this. Jamie Dimon knows this, right? The guys that own the big banks know all this, that the financing, those that control the note are those that make the money. Every time. That's just almost a rule. There's just no doubt about it that controlling the note is the way you want to be. And so why don't you control your own note? Start with your own family first. And when you use your dollars, make sure you love yourself more than you love Wells Fargo. If you listen to my podcast, I say this all the time. You have to love yourself more than you love Wells Fargo. And people will look at me funny, Jubril, when I say that, but you're smiling because you already know what this means. But I'm going to take it back to the listener and say, what that means is if we use Wells Fargo's money, what do we do with that money? We typically pay it back, principal and interest, do we not?
Absolutely.
So when we use our own money, why don't we at least treat it the same, if not better, than we treat Wells Fargo's money? And that's a thought process. That's a conditioned thinking process that has been ingrained in us that if we pay cash, we're much better off than financing. But what we don't realize by paying cash is just another form of financing. So the quicker we can get a handle on that and understand it and control it, the better off we're going to be. So tell me how you've seen some examples of using the infinite banking process. Or maybe I know your wife's involved in it well. You guys got a great relationship around this conversation. At least that's what I gathered when I talked to you. But maybe just give me some examples of how you're actually using it. You don't have to tell numbers, but just how it's changed your thought process or how it's changed the environment, because the environment is what we want to control.
The way I use it, instead of having money just inside of my bank account, I use the money to put it over to the life insurance policy and then borrow it back out. So let's say
Mm-hmm.
$10,000 that I had to pay. If I have a life insurance policy and start that up and borrow back 90% of that, that $10,000 is still working for me as a benefit while I now pay for whatever I need to do 10,000. It's almost like a
Yep.
credit card where you use the credit card to get rewards points and then you go right back and into your bank account and do it. But now I'll charge something on my credit card, take the cash that's already in my bank account, put it in the infinite banking system, borrow it back out, and then pay the credit card off. And
Yeah.
sometimes I don't even have to pay it off immediately because I have 0% interest rate, including the points for 12 months. So I can leverage that in different ways with the credit card, it's no having no interest and still getting equity in my life
Yeah.
insurance. So that's not one way I
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah. It's a good analogy. I like that. The points I've always said it's like a home equity line of credit without the bank being there to tell you that you can or can't do it. One of the things by using a properly structured whole life policy is that the policies bring, I call it 8 guarantees. And one of the 8 guarantees is just that ability to a guaranteed line of credit. Nope. Only question they ever ask you is where do you want me to send the check to? Do you want me to wire it or do you want me to mail it? That's kind of the only question I ever get when I call the insurance company to get a loan. Unlike if you go to the bank, what do you have to do? You have to qualify.
You gotta have paperwork, you gotta get approval, I mean all of that. But you're right, it's no credit check, has nothing to do with your credit. And you can get it and you can so I'm
Yeah.
about to I put in 12,000 today. They said that I could they said they're gonna let it sit for about 4 or 5 days. And they said I can do a loan, 97% of that, in another 8 days. And then
Yeah.
I can pay back other things. So it's really, but I didn't know this. I had no idea I could do this. So it would have been easier for me to be insured
So
2 years ago, and I'd have had more.
sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, it brings a sense of freedom and control that I don't think most people can appreciate. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, but they don't know. It's just, it's not, if they knew, they could appreciate it. If you're used to walking, Wade, and you burn
Right.
your calves and it's fun and you're getting there, it takes an hour to get somewhere, but you're all sweaty out from the outside. But there's an air conditioner, there's a car that could take you somewhere. But if you're not aware of that, you're okay with walking every day, every single day, no matter what, in the
Yeah.
rain, in the snow, because that's what
Yeah. I go back and I use the same analogy that I said, how do you explain what a blue sky looks like to a person that's never seen?
you'll turn yourself
So
blue in the face doing that. It's not worth it.
until that person is ready, and this is the point where, like I said, I try to educate people. I try to provide examples and I tell a lot of stories. That's kind of what I do. But I use that because my passion is to help and to not really help, to empower people to the maximum potential. And so sometimes, because I don't ever want to be a gatekeeper, I
Right.
want you to be, I want you to live to your maximum potential, not to the potential that I set for you.
Nice.
And once people get in line with that thought process, then they're going to go, there's got to be something different. Who's in control? And then the more they take control, the more they get educated, that's when they start seeing this light. I tell you what, is there anything else you would like to share with, if you're talking with somebody on the street and they're thinking, man, I hear what these guys are saying, but I just don't know that I really get it. What would be the one piece of advice you can leave with anybody right now that this, I'm going to make you king for a moment. How's that? You be king for a moment and you say, everybody's got to do this. What would be that one piece of advice?
Everyone needs to talk to a financial advisor or someone who's doing infinite banking, so they could reach me, contact me, Jubril Wilson, 301-509-7138. I'm also on Instagram, the real Jubril _JB, and we can set up an appointment. But because you don't want to just rely on social media, you need to talk to somebody who's trusted and somebody who's really doing what they're saying. I mean, since you and I met, I had just gotten approved for my policy, for the first policy, and put some money in, got the money back out, and now I've started another policy. So that's why it's so fun, because I'm doing
Yeah.
it. And it's so much better when you
Yeah.
can give your own example or examples to help guide somebody else.
I would agree 100%. And I would just say, find somebody that is out there that, again, like you said, that knows what they're doing. How do you know what they're doing? Make sure they're NNI certified. There's an institute. Nelson Nash was a great, he wrote this little book, which called Becoming Your Own Banker, the Infinite Banking Concept. And it's really just a playbook for a 10-hour course of education. And so one of the things that I always tell people is go to the sources, close to the sources you can possibly get. I'm going to the think tank, and the Nelson Nash Institute has a think tank of all practitioners. We get together. We kind of have a conversation about what's going on, how are we doing this, what's going on in the industry, what's going on in the world. And just getting around like-minded people really helps you change your mind. So find those people that are certified to help you through that process. Because if you're not part of a group that can grow, which what I find is you're going to quickly outgrow the person that says, oh, I can do that. Because you don't want the insurance guy that's also your plumber to be selling this. And they can sell a policy, but it's just like anything else. That's selling the tool, not selling the knowledge. And the knowledge is where the value lies. Hey, man, I appreciate your taking time out of your day today. Your information will be down in the show notes. Make sure that if you want to hear Jubril, you want to get a little input from him, reach out to him, contact him. If you're somebody that is in the real estate space and you think Jubril's business can help you out, reach out to Jubril, because again, this is the network. This is the what I call the sequencing, and that we want to be around. And I love that idea that your network is your net worth. I love expanding my network. I love having people that think. Quite frankly, I want to be the dumbest person in the room at all times. And so that's why I love having you on, Jubril, because like you make me think in areas that I've never thought about, because we all have our special sauce. We all have our special skills.
Thanks.
So thank you
What's
so
something
much.
that stood out to you then? Because I didn't know that. You said that
What's that?
think of something you didn't think of.
Just your ability to connect with people and actually there's efficiencies in all marketplaces. So my mind was like, man, if somebody's in real estate, and Jubril can say, hey, I can find some efficiencies in real estate. Why shouldn't I hook up with him and have him help me, find some efficiencies in what I can do there? And one of the things I really appreciated when we were down in Florida together was your ability to say, hey, if I could, I think that was your line. If I knew then what I knew now, it'd be a whole lot different. And that was just like, get started, get engaged, be part. Again, I use this line before too, is that this is a participation sport. Life is a participation sport. And that's what I was hearing from you. It's not a spectator sport. So get involved and start participating.
And thank you. I know in a few minutes, I'm going to meet with one of my clients who's buying a new home construction. Remember, New Home University. They are going to use the infinite banking concept to put down the money on their house so it won't get all eaten up. So while the house is being built, they also have the whole life policy growing at the same time. The house won't be ready until August 2024.
And they're in control of the financing, right? And they're the one that's received the money flowing back to them.
And they're locking in at the price. So they're getting today's price on that same lot, and they won't have to pay. And interest rates by then, I'm pretty sure, election season is going to go down a little bit. But they lock the price today. That's what I love about it. So they're excited about it. And they're doing it because they saw me doing it, and they're my client.
See, there's leadership. There's true leadership. Authentic leadership, following somebody, understanding, getting to know somebody. That's a true leader, right? Doing what I say, doing what I'm doing, or doing what you're doing, and saying, I want to know more what you know because you're doing something that I haven't done yet. So that's how I think we can all learn. That's how everybody that's listening to this, that's how all of us can grow. So that's the control. When I talk about control, that's what I mean. Is it was, like I said, Jamie Dimon, which again, who's the head of Citibank, right? He's always talking about who controls the dollars, who's controlling the dollars. That's called the golden rule. And Nelson would talk about in his book. And when you control your own dollars and you can take advantage of opportunities, and this would be my parting advice too, is like the difference between chaos and opportunity is who has access to money. So the difference between chaos and opportunity is who has access to money. And so if we're not saving somewhere between 10 and 30% of our income on a regular basis, maybe even more, and we have a great environment to save in, which is our properly structured whole life insurance policy, then who's going to be in control? Again, the average consumer is always being reactive and is always getting beat down because they haven't saved enough and they don't have enough money to take advantage of the chaos that could be their opportunity. Yeah. Again, man, this is a good conversation. I really appreciate it. As we move forward, we'll hook up again. I look forward to seeing you again, and congratulate the person that's buying their house using the access to the policy through the loans of the cash value policy. Thanks so much.
We will speak again and meet again on the podcast, and we'll have an update of what.
That's what I'm looking forward to.
Take care.
All right, thanks, man. If you're enjoying this podcast or know anyone else that might be interested, please be sure to hit the subscribe button and please leave a review. This will help this podcast reach and help more people by ranking higher in searches and ultimately help more people get out of financial bondage. And don't be afraid to share this podcast with your friends and family, as we can be easily found on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.